Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack an ancient, deeply intense piece of writing. But we aren't just looking at it as some dusty historical document. No, this is something much more urgent. We're looking at Psalm 59 as a literal psychological survival manual. It's this masterful, raw look into how the human mind processes absolute, paralyzing fear, and somehow, against all odds, finds a way to survive the night. It's a stunning emotional roadmap, really, and the way the author uses language to build and then break tension is just incredibly fascinating.
I want you to picture the suspense of the scenario for a second. Trapped, hunted, innocent. Imagine you're barricaded inside your own home. It's pitch black. And you know for a fact that highly trained, bloodthirsty assassins are waiting right outside your door. You haven't done a single thing to deserve this, but they are out there just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. That claustrophobic, heart-pounding terror, that is exactly where this text begins.
Section 1. Surrounded by the enemy. Okay, let's dive into this and look at the literal life and death stakes here. The threat we're dealing with isn't some abstract anxiety. It's a highly coordinated physical siege. Grounding ourselves right at the top of the primary source text, the author gives us the exact context before the first official verse even starts. The header literally reads, "When Saul sent men to watch his house in order to kill him." I mean, it is incredibly claustrophobic. The author, David, is entirely boxed in. From the very first line, we're thrust into this suffocating stakeout where dangerous men are watching his windows and doors. But before we get into the panicked words that follow, notice this footnote for the word miktam from that header. It notes this is probably a musical or liturgical term. This is a really crucial detail. It reminds us that this wasn't just a diary entry meant to be read quietly in a book. This was designed to be sung out loud. It has rhythm, it has emotional momentum. It's a visceral processing of trauma that you are meant to feel right in your chest. And you can hear that frantic emotion immediately in verse 4. The victim makes this desperate, repetitive plea of total innocence. He cries out, "For no transgression or sin of mine, for no fault of mine, they run and make ready." He's watching these fierce men stir up strife, preparing their weapons, and the agonizing injustice of it all, the fact that he did absolutely nothing to provoke this, is just driving his anxiety through the roof. Section 2. Howling like city dogs. As the sun goes down, the author's fear mutates into these visceral animal metaphors. Look at the aggressive, predatory imagery of verse 6. Each evening they come back, howling like dogs and prowling about the city. Now, in the ancient world, city dogs weren't exactly cute golden retrievers, right? They were dangerous, pack-hunting scavengers. By describing the assassins this way, the author makes us really feel the feral, unpredictable nature of the threat. They're circling his house in the dark, just howling. You can practically hear the psychological warfare happening outside his window.
And this chaotic tension just escalates in verse 7. He describes them with bellowing mouths and swords in their lips. It's a total sensory overload. These men aren't just silently waiting in the shadows, they are actively taunting him, bellowing, and their words are as sharp and lethal as the literal weapons they're carrying. The tension of the impending breach is dialed up to a 10.
Section 3. The Divine Fortress. So, how does a human mind keep from totally breaking under that kind of relentless pressure? Well, to keep from shattering, the narrative takes a fascinating pivot into a profound psychological defense mechanism. The author actively constructs a mental and spiritual sanctuary. And this brilliantly illustrates the turning point of the entire text. Notice the enemy's absolute hubris from verse 7, who they think will hear us. They think they're operating with total impunity in the dark, but contrast that with the jarring, powerful reaction from verse 8. But you, O Lord, laugh at them. You hold all the nations in derision. The author counters their terrifying arrogance with the image of a God who literally scoffs at their puny threats. It just instantly shrinks the monsters outside the door. This allows the author to drop a massive emotional anchor in verse 9. Listen to this language. "O my strength, I will watch for you. For you, O God, are my fortress." Think about how perfectly that metaphor functions. Outside, everything is chaotic, prowling, howling, constantly moving. But inside his mind, his God is a fortress made of stone, immovable, impenetrable, permanent. It is the ultimate psychological grounding technique.
Let's move to section 4 and see how this builds. A call for justice.
Once he feels safe inside his mental fortress, his panic actually turns into a calculated call for justice. It's surprisingly methodical here in verses 11 through 13. Now, what's really interesting about this is you'd think a terrified man would just say, wipe them out instantly, right? But he doesn't. He says, kill them not, lest my people forget. He wants a prolonged lesson. He asks for them to totter by divine power, to be trapped in their own pride and the sin of their mouths, and finally to be consumed in wrath, so that everyone to the ends of the earth will know who rules. He doesn't just want mere survival. He wants an undeniable demonstration of justice.
But as you know, trauma is rarely a straight line to recovery. Just when the author seems totally confident, the text throws us right back into the nightmare. Verse 13 is an exact word-for-word repetition of verse 6. Each evening they come back, howling like dogs and prowling about the city. Visually and audibly, the text itself mimics the cyclical, recurring psychological trauma of a stakeout. The evening always comes back, and yep, the dogs are still out there. In fact, right before the climax of the poem, the imagery gets even more unsettling. In verse 15, they wander about for food and growl if they do not get their fill. The dogs aren't just howling anymore. Now they are starving. They're frustrated, vicious, and right at the door. The tension is stretched as absolutely tight as it can possibly go.
But I will sing of your strength. Bam, just like that, the tension snaps. This bold, bright transition in verse 16 acts as a jarring slam cut in the text. The frantic pacing just stops. The darkest part of the night has passed, and the author has survived.
Section 5, Singing in the Morning. This brings us to the final emotional swing of the text, moving triumphantly from the terrifying, claustrophobic evening into the wide-open hope of dawn. So the crucial point is right here in verse 16. I will sing aloud of your steadfast love in the morning. The fever dream of the night is finally broken by the daylight. The howling of the dogs is replaced by the author singing aloud. The relief of the morning light represents the tangible proof of the steadfast love and the refuge he so desperately hoped for in the dark. When we pull back and look at the whole architecture of this text, the emotional arc is just staggering. We started with paralyzing fear, howling dogs in the evening, and profound distress. But by strategically retreating into his divine fortress, the author transforms his reality, experiencing the relief of the morning, singing aloud, and finding an absolutely reliable refuge. It's a stunning journey from panic to total peace.
This brings us to the end of our deep dive into Psalm 59, and it leaves us with a highly relevant takeaway. This 3,000-year-old survival manual shows us that when we're surrounded by things that threaten to destroy us, what we build inside our minds actually matters more than what is prowling outside. So, I leave you with this to consider. When the howling starts, where do you find your fortress in the dark?